Delhi, 7:30 in the morning, and the elite of Indian teenagers arrive for school. The Indian economy is one of the fastest growing in the world. A key driver of that growth is education. Yet almost half of all children abandon formal schooling by the age of 11. A third of India's 1.2 billion population are illiterate. The government's aiming for 100% literacy by 2020 and wants every child to attend and stay on at school. The intensive focus on learning generates a very academic approach to teaching history. These sixth formers are learning about the history of partition and Britain's involvement through the division of Bengal.
लॉर्ड कर्जन ने कहा क्या कि बंगाल जो है geographically it's a very big state and it is very difficult to rule over Bengal from a single center. एक नया स्टेट फॉर्म किया गया, ईस्ट बंगाल एंड आसाम, और ये बंगाल की जो हिस्टोरियंस हैं वो ये कहते हैं कि डिवीजन के पीछे जो ब्रिटिश सरकार की नीति थी वो बांटो और राज करो की नीति का एक अंग था. वो चाहते थे कि हिंदुस्तान में जो ग्रोइंग नेशनल मूवमेंट है उसको कमजोर किया जाए, एंड सो इट वाज पॉसिबल ओनली बाय डिवाइडिंग द टू मेजर कम्युनिटीज ऑफ इंडिया, हिंदूज एंड मुस्लिम्स. लेकिन जो सबसे ज्यादा पावरफुल जो लॉजिक है वो स्टेटमेंट है गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया के होम सेक्रेटरी थे लॉर्ड रिस्ले. In 1904 he is saying United Bengal is a power. Our purpose behind division is to break the opponents of our rule and so to weaken them. अगर हम बंगाल को विभाजित कर देते हैं तो हमारी सत्ता के जो सबसे शक्तिशाली विरोधी हैं वो टूट जाएंगे और हमारी सत्ता को और अस्थायित्व मिलेगा.
All pupils are expected to clean and tend the school. Today, these 550 highly selective schools achieve the best exam results in the country.
Till 1904, Congress was loyal to the British rule. But in 1905, Congress demanded Swaraj, or you can say self-rule. And the demand of Congress was bound to create a different relation with the British rule.
They're learning about how the division of Bengal led to the formation of a political party to represent only Muslims, opposed to the Indian National Congress, which was non-sectarian.
In fact, the high-class Muslim people were instigated by the then Governor General Lord Minto. You see, Congress is a party of only Hindus. Why don't you have your own parties? They are not going to represent your interest. Congress is a party which represents only Hindus. जब ये बात जमींदार मुसलमानों के दिमाग में भरी गई तो 1906 में with the help of Lord Minto, a new party was formed that was Indian Muslim League. अब मुस्लिम लीग की पॉलिसी बहुत स्पष्ट थी. They will be loyal to the British government and in return they will get reservation in job and reservation in legislative assemblies. कि मुसलमान माइनॉरिटी में हैं और एक माइनॉरिटी कम्युनिटी के पॉलिटिकल इंटरेस्ट को प्रोटेक्ट करने के लिए रिजर्वेशन दो दिया गया, पृथक निर्वाचन मंडल जो दिया गया, should religion be infused in politics?
सर ये धर्म राजनीति का एक अंग है सर, ये इसका आधार नहीं हो सकता सर।
धर्म राजनीति का
एक अंग है सर,
धर्म राजनीति का अंग नहीं।
आज भी है सर।
Back in Delhi, at another private school, students are looking at what brought the British to India in the first place.
Okay. Now, initially, how the British came to India?
As traders.
Okay. So now, what was their major motives? Okay. So you find that initially, the balance of trade was in India's favor, and that is why the Mughal kings, they agreed for the trade. Is that clear?
Yes.
Okay.
Ma'am, they introduced three things, ma'am, like they divided the administration into army, police and civil services.
So, administration.
Since the 1960s, a series of governments have stamped their politics on the teaching of history. But with the economic growth and modernisation of the country, educationalists felt a fresh approach was needed.
Now they did what?
The children today are global citizens. They are no longer concentrated or they're no longer restricted by the national boundaries. Today, a student studying in our school might be going to UK for further education. And if we do give him a wrong connotation of what British rule has been in India, then that restricts his whole viewpoint.
Now, civil services was called what? Civil services was called? I used a particular term, the steel frame of India, isn't it? So now you find that the police, we have adopted after independence, the police set up exactly ditto. The civil services, exactly ditto. Now it is known as what? The permanent executive. The governments may come, the governments may go, but the civil services stay.
3 years ago, another rewrite was ordered. Bhattacharya led a team of 70 historians who developed a more thematic view of imperialism.
We have to see what colonialism does to a society. The question is not simply to see this is good or bad.
Let's come to the most important introduction of the British into India. That was the Western education. Now, if you see...
But moving from a chronological to a thematic approach angered politicians of all shades, as the head of the new child-centred national curriculum recalls.
When the first book started coming out in 2006, my goodness, what a storm we were facing every day. I mean, this campus was a constant cyclonic weather zone with the media coming out hunting, literally, for a kill. It was impossible, actually. I haven't faced TV cameras for that reason, and I don't, precisely because the media just don't have the desire to understand. They're out to kill. And they just didn't see that we were after some longer goals. I would like to leave a legacy where whoever comes in power feels a little hesitant to remove these textbooks.
Despite the media backlash, the changes have been welcomed by Indian teachers, many of whom for the first time sat on the consultative committees.
6 chapters, earlier they had 10 chapters. But whatever 6 chapters they are in depth. It is not just that they have touched superficially, they have tried to study in details with the help of case study, empirical study. They are coming with certain sources. In most of the cases, they are using oral sources. In earlier books, they had almost ignored it. In partition, when lesson starts, they have interviewed people. What is the experience of the people who suffered?
We had this thing in our country that we used to blame everything on the Britishers. Why is there poverty? Because the British looted us and took our wealth away. But now we realize, no, population has been a major problem. Population increase has not been because of the Britishers, it's been because of our own deeds. So this is one example that I'm giving you that yes, you're absolutely right in saying is that the way we perceive history has definitely changed, and it has helped us to manage our own affairs in a better way.
Take responsibility.
Yes, take responsibility rather than blaming somebody else.
We had different states, we had different languages, there was no uniform language also. That is why a uniform language with English as a medium was introduced in India. Now this gave them what? This gave them what? Manpower. Yes, they needed manpower in army, in police, in the civil services. But the benefit for us was what? It was immense.
Ma'am, they could spread their thoughts to the British, ma'am, they could conversate with them.
It brought about unity. Political unity, administrative unity, and a language which could unite and spread ideas. Clear?
In Britain, the study of the empire is about to be made compulsory at Key Stage 3. As part of his rewriting exercise, Professor Bhattacharya spent time looking at British textbooks.
British history textbooks I found were very well produced and pedagogically they are sensitive to issues, the kinds of issues that I have talked about, some of those issues. But I found the books at one level disappointing, and I found many of the ideas and the framing structures to be, old-fashioned and conservative. They seem to be emphasizing on dynastic histories. You move from early Tudors to late Tudors to the history of the Elizabethan England, etc. That's one type. So, and we moved away from dynastic histories a long, long back. In England, there doesn't seem to be that effort. Possibly it is linked up with the fact that the royalty is still possibly important. Therefore, a certain lineage of royal history remains important. But the framing is one which does not allow space for an alternative history, which actually in Britain has been developing for the last 30 years. It is surprising that social history, which is so vibrant in England, is not something which has been able to change the framework of history writing for school textbooks.
Despite the brickbats, Bhattacharya believes it's essential for all children to have a more complex view of history, and that it's a process that other nations need to go through, including Britain.
You have history which does not really have adequate space for history of social groups other than the elites. Workers, peasants, marginals, the commoners, the people who continue to live in the commons. Their histories are not there in the textbooks. If I was to ask, what would a child who comes from that background, what kind of sense will they make of this history? I would obviously feel that they can't relate to this history, what is being taught, which is the history of dominant groups. History is political. You cannot get away from it. You can deny it, you can repress it, you can refuse to accept it. But the fact is, it is political. There is a way of interpreting which reveals your worldview, which reveals a vision, which in some way legitimates a particular world.